Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.
Elizabeth Newman, who has just celebrated her 6-month anniversary as Artistic Director of Sheffield Theatres, has adapted F Scott Fitzgerald's most famous novel, The Great Gatsby, for the stage, for the theatre she recently left, Pitlochry Festival Theatre. It will be co-produced by Derby Theatre, where it will also open that venue's 50th anniversary season, and will be directed by Derby's artistic director, Sarah Brigham. I spoke to Sarah and Elizabeth about the production while it was in rehearsals, and I asked them why they wanted to put this particular story on stage.
Do you want me to start, Elizabeth? Or shall you? Well, so obviously it's 100 years anniversary. And for me, it was a book I've always loved. And because for me, it's a book about, I mean, in lots of ways, although it's a great romance story, it's a book about a loss of hope. It's a book about how the American dream and the desire to social climb is quite often really quashed, shall we say, by the status quo. And Elizabeth and I were looking for something to work together on because she is brilliant. And we've got a long relationship from when she worked at Bolton. And so we kind of pushed this around a little bit. And then Elizabeth sent me her version of Secret Garden. And I was like, oh my God, you're a brilliant writer as well as a brilliant director. Elizabeth, why don't you just adapt this? And so she has, and she's given us the most brilliant version. It's got all of the drama. It hits all the story points that everybody knows, but it doesn't shy away from this really big drama. It's got big emotions in there, dealing with some big themes. So it's just really exciting to be working together on this.
This is a bit of an entirely different challenge to something like Secret Garden. There's a lot more to it, isn't there, Elizabeth?
Yeah, it's just different, really. I mean, as Sarah said, we've known each other for a long time, and she's so extraordinary at what she does that it felt like she was definitely the person to sort of lead this charge. It is different, but then it's also not different. I think with any adaptation, you're just trying to find your way in and how to make it a living drama that can unfold as a piece of theatre versus something that can happen in the interior of someone's mind when they're reading a book. But as Sarah said, because it has within it such a huge inner life, it's epic in its investigation of how challenging it is to be alive, and what it means to have, with Nick, he is really, it is a total coming of age story and a reckoning of what happens when you enter the adult world as a naive, hopeful, energetic, up for it. And then these things happen that mean that all of a sudden that cynicism is creeping into your heart, actually. And how that changes you. And Austen in Sense and Sensibility talks about how, when Marianne has her heart broken, they talk about her heart being disfigured.
Yeah.
And I think that is when we are confronted with very difficult life challenges, it can disfigure our hearts and our soul. And I think that's what we experience with Nick because of, seeing what happens with Gatsby and Daisy and Tom and the brutality of the wealthy and the elite.
Yeah.
And what the disregard they have for others, especially those who are working hard to be more and to aspire to be more than they were born into, which was Jay Gatsby's life story. So, and it's not a long novel, it is classed as a novel, not as a novella, but within it there's so much, as Sarah says, it's rich. And what Sarah always has the ability, she always demonstrates the ability in everything that she makes, is that she's able to get that richness and texture with the actors and with the creative team to bring something to life in a way that has a really profound impact on audiences. So I am sure that because of her and the company and the team, the audience are going to be in for a treat.
Yeah, you say sure because it has been done on stage. There was a version a few years ago, wasn't there, where they did every single word of the novel. It was a very long night in theatre, but short enough for that, just about, isn't it?
Yeah, wow. Did every single word?
Yes. But you have to be selective. A lot of people think adaptation, well, it must be easy because it's there already, but you've got to be, it's not easy, is it? You've still got to be selective and you've still got to be inventive, haven't you?
Yeah, you do, because you have to solve the problem of the fact that, in a novel, you're gifted with someone's interior life.
Yeah.
How do you externalise that interior life? That's the challenge.
Yeah.
And I think this novel especially, it trips the line, doesn't it, between kind of sobriety and oblivion, between happiness and hope, between love and lust, really. Yeah. And so it's always playing with you. It's always, and Nick kind of is always jumping from one to the other. And in the novel, he talks about being within and without, that he's at the same time within this story and exists and living within it, but he's also outside of it, watching it at an arm's length, because of course it's written in kind of retrospect.
Yeah.
So I think it's that as well, how you don't, and I think that's what Elizabeth's done really well with this adaptation, is that she hasn't given the end away.
Yeah.
And even if you know the novel, there's still kind of, you still take on these twists and these turns and really crucially the relationship and the love relationship actually between Nick and Gatsby, and what that is, and how he is at once obsessed with him and repulsed by him, and kind of drawn to him, and also kind of really not understanding what that's about. But ultimately, as Elizabeth says, recognising that society doesn't really, truthfully, make room for someone who isn't born to the manor, born with a silver spoon in your mouth, however you want to put it.
Yeah. In some ways, slightly later, he's dealing with the similar sorts of things as Chekhov, the old money versus new money.
Yeah, it is, and that sense of Chekhovian, and even in a way, it's sort of what Dostoevsky is grappling with, which is, is this enough for one person's life?
Yes.
Is this enough? What is enough? Where am I going? What am I reaching for? That those imaginative worlds that we put in our minds, which Jay Gatsby has the ability to imagine this other reality with Daisy, and this is this longing that he has for this thing that is not within his reach. It is not within his reach in the same way as the three sisters longing for Moscow or St. Petersburg or whatever that is. I think the other thing is with something like The Great Gatsby is audiences come with an expectation. They have in their mind that it's flappers and champagne and jazz music, and Sarah and the team deliver on all of that expectation without denying Fitzgerald what he was doing, which is to create a drama about what it means to lose faith. In a way, Fitzgerald proposes something that is deeply devastating, which is that good doesn't win out.
Yeah. Yes.
It's interesting, isn't it? Just that the audience's relationship to the novel is quite like Nick's relationship to Gatsby, that they're drawn to those. There's only two parts in the whole novel, and one of them is an absolute disaster. So, but that's what audiences think. Oh, it's just going to be 1920s flapper girls, and that's what it's going to be. Yeah. That's what we want. That we are driven towards the optimism, towards the positive. But quite often the story underneath that isn't. And
that's one big difference with Chekhov. Chekhov showing sort of the faded aristocracy. Here, it's the opulence and the richness of what we see. Ooh. And how do you translate that to a relatively small stage? I mean, there's a version in London at the Colosseum at the moment with a big budget that can do that. Well, I'm assuming you don't have their budget.
No, we don't. And one of the composer sound designer went to see that, and I said, "Oh, how did they do the car?" And he said, like bringing on a car.
Yes.
And I went, oh, okay, a real car. And I was like, oh, okay, well, we won't be doing that. However, what we will be doing is, what's amazing as well is Pitlochry, and obviously, they're all the less for not having Elizabeth anymore, but what a phenomenal team they are.
Yeah.
And going up there and working there has really been superb, because their set building team have just created the most beautiful design by Jen McGinley. And it's got both, the luxury that you're looking for and the fizz, but also done in a way that's really fluid and that allows us to move, because it moves location so quickly. You're in a bar, you're in a car, you're in West Egg, East Egg. It just moves. So she's created this really beautiful design that's just allows for some real choreographic fluidity. And then we've got these 9 actors who are just extraordinary. They're both the jazz band, because there is jazz music that's fed all the way through it, brilliantly composed and musical directed by Shona Murray. And then they're also the characters, headed up by David Rankin, who plays Nick. So it's I think regional theatre does it best. Would be my opinion, because we find we're theatre. We find the ways and the inventive ways to make these things happen.
And it has to be adaptable to 2 different stages as well, this set as well, doesn't it?
It does, although it's remarkable how similar they are.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh. I walked into Pitlochry and I was like, this is weird, because we have that, that kind of arc, 1976, very wide, the audience hug the stage, and it's exactly the same at Pitlochry. And then you go backstage and it's exactly the same. Huge wing stage left, small wing stage right. So anything big is always trucked on from stage left. Not an artistic choice in either theatre.
Yes.
So I was really, really amazed at how similar they are. So I'm hoping the transfer is going to be really painless.
And the novel is famously narrated by Nick Carraway. So how big a character, it varies how big a character is in different adaptations. So is he still sort of what it all revolves around in your version?
Yeah, he is, because I think that he is the central character, because he's the one that changes. I mean, from the beginning of the story to the end, even though it's retrospective, as we go back with him and we live out what happened, he's the one that fundamentally changes inside. So therefore it's his story. So it felt really important to not shy away from that. And then it was about what's the reason that he's telling it? Because in a novel, you can just be telling it. But on the stage, there has to be a dramatic reason to speak aloud.
Yeah, so Elizabeth, she has used Nick as the central story thread that goes all the way through. And it became about him starting to really understand. As she said, it's a coming-of-age story. He starts to understand what it is, what his background means. And, of course, Fitzgerald came from a very similar background. He had access to wealth whilst wasn't himself wealthy. And also him understanding, and I think falling in love and then falling out of love and possibly falling in love again with that figure of Gatsby and everything that he's trying to be and everything that he represents, really.
Yeah, as I said before, it's on in the Coliseum in London, and there've been 4 musicals, there's been a ballet, there seems to be a new film or TV adaptation every 20 years, including the year after it came out was the first film adaptation. What do you think is the continuing appeal or relevance of this story?
I think, it's interesting that you said that, and one of the things that I've been saying to the actors is, please don't watch the millions of adaptations and the Leonardo DiCaprio adaptation and all of that. Like, leave it in the memory and let's create our own version. I think it's because it deals with those universal themes, and I think it's because we all recognise, as an actor it's just when you recognise that desire to be a part of something.
Yeah.
So recognise Gatsby's story, that desire to be a part of something, and that being pushed to the outside. I think we all recognise growing up and learning that moments perhaps that we're drawn into in retrospect were slightly different. There's a really interesting moment where Daisy sees the part, you see the first party and it's all this glamorous, wonderful party. And then you see the second party and Fitzgerald kind of allows you to see it through her eyes. And to her, it's something completely different. It's vulgar and it's, distasteful. And, and so this thing that Gatsby's been creating just for her actually is not loved by her. And again, I think we recognise that. And I think we are all drawn to the parties and the glamour and the, and the celebrity of it. But also we all know that it's a veneer. I think even when your audiences go, what star are you going to put in this? And then they see them and they go, oh, they weren't very good, were they? oh, they weren't what I expected. Or, I think we all understand what the veneer of celebrity is as well. So, yeah, I think it's lots of different things that just keep it that eternal story.
Yeah, I was just looking at our reviewer's review of the one that's on at the Coliseum. And she was talking about the Trumpian gold of the glamour, and also one of the characters who avoided the draft. So there's a contemporary relevance. But I think from what you're saying, there's also, it's nice to know that their money doesn't bring happiness to these people, that there is an emptiness to it as well.
Absolutely. And the parallels certainly with Trump's America are really clear, aren't they? I mean, you can see why the story has been flopped to on Broadway, because, the parallels are very, very clear. You could literally draw each character. Trump is Tom, Nick is, whoever. So, but I think it's the universal themes as ever that really matter, I think, for me anyway.
Do you have time to, or is there any need to explore those contemporary relevancies when you're in the rehearsal room?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, we talk about it all the time. Yeah. Because as an actor, you need to not. You need to know what you have to say to the world, right? Like, why tell this story now? So we're talking about it all the time. We've also cast Arain Johnson as Gatsby. He's a brilliant young black actor. So he's really interested in what that does as well, our adaptation of it. So whilst it's not necessarily about underlining that or putting a ring around that for the audience, for ourselves, we need to know the politic of making certain decisions on stage and what it is that we're saying and what your audience are bringing with them as well. I think that's, for me, that's always kind of important without pulling you too far away from the original text.
Elizabeth, I've always known you as a director, and you've done one or two adaptations over the last few years. But what's it like as a writer handing over your work to somebody else to direct? I know you've got a lot of respect for Sarah as a director, but even so, is it a bit of a wrench for you?
No. No. So this is adaptation number 37 that I've done.
Right.
And until a few years ago, I always directed them myself.
Yeah.
And they were predominantly, they were either work for families, which I did a lot of, or Russian adaptations. So Dostoevsky, Chekhov's, And a few years ago, and it did actually coincide with the birth of my daughter, actually, I decided to stop directing my own writing.
Right.
Because I realised that it made me a less good writer, because I would get to a sticky bit and I think, I know how to fix that.
Yeah.
Stage. Do you know?
Yes, I've done that. Yes.
And then you go, well, that's not really writing it, then, is it? That's a different thing. And I have full respect for that. And there are amazing artists out there that do both all the time, because they're just that brilliant. I am not that brilliant. So it's like, actually, if I just focus on the one thing and then I hand that over to someone who's utterly extraordinary, like Sarah, then it can become something beyond whatever I could achieve.
Yeah, more of a collaboration.
Yeah, and just, just more than I could ever do on my own. And I think there's something really brilliant about that feeling. And also, there's something brilliant about it not being the way you would do it.
Yeah.
About going, oh yeah, I wouldn't have done it that way. That's great. And now, because now I get notified like when my work's made by other people elsewhere, and I think this year some work's being done there's a production being done in Belgium, there's a production being done in America, so there's all these different people who are doing the thing off the page, and will never do it as the original production was, or do it, and I just find it so exciting. Like, I find it so exciting. It's the most exciting thing. And it ceases to be yours. Like it stops being yours. Like there are moments where, and because I don't write original work, that's because I'm not really a writer, I'm a person who writes. I love the moment where I get to the point where I go, I don't know if that is from the original source material or if that is something that's plopped out.
Yeah.
And that's the moment where you know that you're cooking.
Yeah.
Because it's existing in itself, and that's really good and exciting. But I also think as well that actors have such an ability to make things live. And David Rankin, who's wonderful, who's playing Nick, has done a Chekhov that I adapted. And when he first started reading Nick, like the relief that came over me, that I was like, oh,
yeah, you got that one right.
It works.
and that he, is this brilliant actor, is able to like merge himself with Fitzgerald and me facilitating Fitzgerald for it to live as a human being in front of us.
Yeah.
And that's like the happiest moment I ever have when I'm in a room and people are doing things that I've adapted.
Yeah. Sometimes you're not sure if an actor's going to find the same rhythm in their head as you had in yours when you wrote it, do you?
Yeah, or even just feel the same way that you feel about it. Like, there's something about, do they have the same? And I know I've known David quite a long time, so I sense that he would, but like he totally and utterly empathizes with that person.
Yeah.
A way that is necessary to make those words live in that way. And that's really special. And I've not seen The Great Gatsby on stage, so I've got no comparison in my head. And I've also not seen all of the TV film adaptations either. So, and that I've always found really, really helpful to me, is to not have other ways of doing it, in my mind. It's like, I think you find it as a director as well. If you've seen different versions of a play, sometimes you're a bit hampered, I think.
Yeah. You start to do a compilation of what you've seen.
Or you start to get anxious that you're not doing, or I do. I'm incredibly insecure. I go, well, I must be getting it wrong because I'm not doing it that way, and then I panic, and then whereas if you haven't got it in your head, then you can't compare it, can you?
Yeah. Well, I think with, 38 adaptations, I think you are a writer, not just because you write.
Well, I think Amy Tam did this brilliant, My Beautiful Agent, Alan Brody, and Alison and Alan, just like the most amazing humans ever. Alan's like, right, you've got to write an original work now. And I listened to a podcast recently. I am going off on one now, so I'm sure you can edit this out, which Amy Tan did about writing.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting what she said about mining your own trauma. And I was like, oh yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? And then my mum was up recently to visit us in Sheffield, and we were lying on the sofa, and my mum's always been really like, not like she doesn't enforce or inflict her opinions on you as her child. Do you know what I mean? Like she sort of, but she was there and we were talking about writing, whatever. She said, you know what you've got to do? And she just sounded like, my mum is like a Chekhov character. She was like, what you've never done is you've never been brave enough to write what you know.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. I thought, that's quite telling, isn't it? What I do is I find novels where I know the people, and then there's still a distance between that personal content, because in the end it's Fitzgerald and I'm facilitating Fitzgerald. So Whereas I think probably a combination of my mum and my partner Russell and Alan and Alison will mean at some point I am going to have to rip the plaster off and be like, okay, here's what I know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it does take some courage because you are expressing things that you might not have expressed
before. You
before.
Can't pretend it's someone else, can you?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's Chekhov, not me. I don't have those feelings. I'm just facilitating those feelings.
Exactly. Yes.
I don't have the level of despair that Nick has. I don't have that total loss of faith and cynicism that's crept into my heart.
Sarah, you mentioned before that this is the 100th anniversary of the novel, but it's also the 50th anniversary of your theatre, Derby Theatre, isn't it?
And, it is indeed.
I was looking back through our news articles. Our news pages and our podcasts sort of document your life at Derby Theatre through Steve's work, actually. Yeah. But you were actually the first artistic director there, weren't you, from 20?
Yeah, so Derby Theatre is the same theatre as Derby Playhouse. So if you don't live in Derby, we are Derby Playhouse. And if you do live in Derby, we're still Derby Playhouse because you change a theatre's name and it takes 100 years for people
like a pub, yeah.
Exactly. So I always say to actors, if you get lost, ask for the Playhouse. But it went into administration in 2009 and then reopened and closed and reopened and closed. And then in 2012 came into its kind of current formation, and then I took over in 2013. And it's been an extraordinary journey. It's been a real roller coaster. I inherited a theatre with no funding, regular funding, a staff team who had been made redundant 3 times, and somebody very high up in a funding body saying to me, "Sarah, this is career suicide. What on earth have you done going there?" But it's been the most extraordinary time, and I've been really blessed by the audiences who have really taken the theatre to its heart. We're devastated when it closed. Absolutely, there were literally, protests and campaigns on the street, and they were devastated. So now it really feels like we're back in conversation with them, and that they're definitely sit at the heart of everything we do. And we have a brilliant, brilliant team. So I feel very, very lucky to have been able to go on this journey. It's been, it's put a few years on me. I'm not going to lie. But we're really lucky to be where we are now and celebrating 50 years of that brilliant building. And
what this is the first production in the 50th anniversary season. What else have you got coming up for that?
Yeah, so coming up, at Christmas we've got a new adaptation of Oliver Twist. It's an adaptation that's done before but been refreshed, rethought by Deb McAndrew. We've got Macbeth, directed by Mark Babbage in collaboration with Hall Truck and Bolton Octagon, and then still to be announced the summer season. So we're looking at some popular, let's say, some ambitiously popular work, let's put it that way.
Right. And Mark, a former artistic director of Bolton Octagon, like you, Elizabeth. And since I've known you, you've gone from the Octagon, which was one theatre and a studio, to Pitlochry, which was 2 theatres and an outdoor space. And now, how many theatre spaces have you got at Sheffield?
We have 4.
And you've just opened a new one, haven't you?
Yeah, we took on a 4th theatre in January. On the 2nd of January, we took on the Montgomery, which is our youngest family member. But it's slightly funny because it's our oldest child. So Montgomery was actually opened in 1886.
Right.
And we're really proud that the Monties joined Sheffield Theatres. It's a beautiful art centre, a 400-seat little mini Cross Arch, mini by the Sheffield Theatres while I see them. So we have the Monty, the Tanya Masevich Playhouse, which is a flexible space like the Octagon. So whenever I sit in there, I sort of have these feelings of feeling like I'm sat back in the Octagon as well. And then the Crucible, which I think is probably the space that we're most synonymous for, probably. Artistically, which is 960 seats in thrust. And I already have my favourite seat that I love to sit in. And the Lyceum, which is the most beautiful proscenium arch that was built by a kind of Matcham descendant. So it really does feel like a Matcham when you're in there. And I love sitting in the Lyceum to watch shows. Absolutely love it. And I love taking my daughter in there as well. And it's a really, you feel incredibly close to the stage. And our panto, it's Aladdin this year, our panto is absolutely amazing in as well. So lots to see in the 4 different spaces. And it's a great city. Sheffield is the most extraordinary city, and it already feels like home. It was my 6-month anniversary in the job yesterday.
Wow.
Wow, that's come around quick.
And I had this moment where I was on the way home after an equity meeting here, and I was like, Sheffield is my home, which is great.
Yeah, I remember when I spoke to you when you just moved up to Pitlochry, and you moved up there on your own, of course. You were trying to find your way around. This is very different because now you're moving to Sheffield with a family, aren't you? So how are you settling down with the family there?
Yeah, everyone's really happy. And it's sort of the perfect combination of being in this amazing, buzzy, fizzy city that's like full of music and activity and like loads of different places and things to do and museums and galleries and lots of humans. It's brilliant. And then you're 10 minutes from the Peak District.
Yeah.
From our back garden, we sit at the top of the back garden and we look out on the hills, and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
The city that's produced some of the best bands over the past, 50 years?
Yeah. Literally on Sheffield Live, which is our favourite radio station, this morning, we had like all the world's music playing on the way in, on the way to nursery. And it's like, Arctic Monkeys, Pulp, Self-Esteem, you name it. It's
Richard Hawley,
Yeah.
And what everybody, I'm sure, wants to know is, did you manage to sneak in to watch the snooker?
I watched the final.
Did you?
Built bits. I dressed up as essentially a gigantic snooker cue. Had a back dress. And I managed to nick some gloves from hospitality to take a picture of myself next to the trophy to send to my mum and dad, because my mum really wanted me to go and help polish the balls. I explained that was actually somebody's job. Absolutely thrilled to bits to be there. It was brilliant. I love the snooker.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll be staying there, but we don't know that yet, do we?
We love the snooker. We absolutely love the snooker, and snooker is so part of Sheffield, and it is for us. So you'll have to come next year, David. You can sit next to my dad. He's coming.
Right. That very tempting invitation came from Sheffield Theatre Artistic Director Elizabeth Newman, whose adaptation of F Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, directed by Sarah Brigham, will run as part of the summer repertory season at Pitlochry Festival Theatre in Scotland from the 27th of June to the 25th of September 2025, before transferring to Derby Theatre from the 3rd to the 25th of October. For more information and to book tickets, see www.pitlochryfestivaltheatre.com or derbytheatre.co.uk.
You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.